All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Film Freaks, movies that we love. I'm your old pal, the Moo Cow, a.k.a. Paul A. Presenza, and I'm joined by...
Jonathan A. Moody, your co-host.
And together, we are joined on this episode by...
Just Jenn.
Like, finally!
Finally!
Yeah, you haven't been on the show yet.
No.
We've been pitching her a whole bunch of crap, and now we finally get to show her a nice movie. And this time, we are doing one of my favorite movies of all time, from Scottish director Bill Forsyth, Comfort and Joy.
Wow.
If you recall, we did Local Hero, which is officially my favorite movie of all time. We did that for Criterion Watch.
You did that with Lenore.
Yeah, and I know you saw it.
I bought it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a brilliant movie.
I tried showing it to my dad, but it was in, a lot of it's the Scottish stuff or whatever, and there's no subtitles.
Right.
So my dad was like, nope.
Well, this movie... You can't even get this movie anywhere. It's released on DVD in England only. I don't really know what the deal is with the rights, but this is part of what I call Bill Forsyth's big Scottish trilogy, where he starts off with Gregory's Girl, which was a big hit, and then Local Hero, and then Comfort and Joy. And those are the Scottish movies that he did before he went on to do some of the Hollywood stuff, and he got very disillusioned with the Hollywood stuff because he has a way of doing movies that are just, the humor is very sort of quirky and warm and charming. It's not typical Hollywood in your face kind of stuff. So that didn't work. But this was like his last of his really good Scottish independent films, and it's just one of my favorites. And it's Christmas themed. So I thought you might find it fun, Just Jenn. So we will return after we watch this movie and we will discuss it. All right? Bye.
Bye.
So hello, we are back. So, what did you guys think of Comfort and Joy? Are this the first time you guys have seen it? Mm-hmm. Had you guys even heard of it before?
I had heard of it through you.
Okay. Yeah, I've talked about it.
Counts.
It's a movie that I absolutely positively love to death, and I don't know. It just hits me in my heart. I love it. So I'm dying to hear what you guys have to say.
Because it's food related.
Well, there's that.
Yes, Jen.
I thought it was cute. I didn't think it was bad. The slower pacing was a bit slow for me, but it was 80s?
Yeah, 84.
Yeah, so that fits in kind of with that time period. But no, it was cute. The jokes were nice and subtle. I did appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Would you say this is the best thing you've seen on Indie Film Cafe? Period.
Why would you even ask something like that? I know the answer.
I know, but I want you to say it. This is the best film you've seen on there.
Yes.
Yeah. Paul does show good movies from time to time.
I do.
He has a whole he has a couple shows for that, but just because we were tired of always showing bad movies.
And we'd love to have you on for more of the good ones, but we love having you on for some of the bad ones too. Because they're fun.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but
you liked it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. I thought just like Jen said, it was cute. It was funny. The characters were sort of relatable in some way or another, and there's things. It almost feels like there's something for everybody in this movie. Mm-hmm. Which is great.
It's got a very warm, grounded, subtle, quirky sense of humor that I love. That is hallmark of Bill Forsyth, especially in his early movies, his Scottish films, and it's the kind of thing that when he came over finally to Hollywood, and I forget the name of the first one he did with Burt Reynolds and...
I know what you're talking about. Kino released it.
The safe...
Cracker one, yeah. Which
was okay, but it didn't really feel like a Bill Forsyth movie.
That was written by John Sayles.
Yeah.
That movie.
And A, because, he didn't write it, and B, the studio really didn't understand or appreciate the sort of way that Bill Forsyth does humor. I mean, remember like that one scene where it was just visual only, where they were doing the retakes of the commercial, and you got the one person standing in there with the Superman T-shirt, and then you've got the person standing next to him, looking like Clark Kent with the classic haircut, the hairstyle, without saying anything. You just visually picking that. It was just adorable. He likes to put subtle little clues and little jokes and little things into all of his films. And Hollywood doesn't, I mean, it's not then, definitely not now. They just don't really appreciate that. They more want to go over the head and hit people over the head and be very open and huge and everything. They're not into small, subtle humor. Yeah. So it drove him crazy, and he felt like he couldn't really do what he wanted to do. So eventually he ended up going back to Scotland and back to the indie scene. But unfortunately, by then, towards the end of the 90s, finding independent producing was a lot harder, and unfortunately his output dwindled down. He was able to finally make the second Gregory's Girl movie. I forget the name of it, which was okay. It wasn't quite as good as the original one, but it was still nice to have. And we are going to do Gregory's Girl because that's probably his most famous one, his most popular film. Local Hero is his most critically acclaimed and one that was Oscar worthy, and you know, is on Criterion Watch. This one kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and I think part of it also is because, you know, it's the one that was after Local Hero, but before he goes Hollywood, and there was kind of a controversy at the time because there really was, this is sort of based on reality, there was an ice cream war going on in Edinburgh in the north of Scotland, but it was a more serious war, and it turned out that there were drugs involved, and there were some people getting killed.
It was a drug war, okay.
And he actually got some flack because there were people saying, well, you're taking the situation and turning it into a comedy and making fun of it, but there's nothing funny about that. But he wasn't covering that specifically. He was only taking that situation. You know what I mean? So,
well, anytime you take something like that and make something a little more lighthearted, people are gonna, I mean...
Yeah, and I they don't quite understand that he wasn't covering that real part of it. He just wanted a portion of it because he saw the absurdity in it, and that's what this movie is kind of about. People going crazy over absurd situations and putting regular people in absurd situations. Yeah,
this is absurd.
And it's just so full of these wonderful little absurdities. You know, I love the little jingle with the "Hello, folks" and Mr. Bunny. It's just super adorable.
Oh man, you should have seen it, folks. Paul got so excited when Mr. Bunny appeared.
I love Mr. Bunny
for the first time.
Gotta make that your ringtone on your phone.
And
that would be hilarious. I could see him doing that.
Just all the little jingles and all the little goofy things that were like so big back in the 80s were there, and yeah, I just really dug it. You know, it's one of my favorite movies.
I mean, it's called Comfort and Joy. It sort of makes sense to the plot of the movie, but really, I mean, the beginning of the movie isn't very comforting.
Oh God, and so the poor Dickie, he's like this poor schmuck who, you know, he's with this crazy beautiful woman, Maddie, who, you know, at first it's kind of set up so it looks like she's stealing shit and he's following her. Like,
yeah, I thought he
security.
was. He was security. That's what I thought. And then it turned out they were together. They were in cahoots.
Right. And again, that's a typical Bill Forsyth thing. He sets you up to think there's something going on when in reality it's something very different. As we've seen with the psychiatrist scene later on. So he's, you know, head over heels with this girl who's beautiful but nuts, has these little issues, and she drops a bombshell out of nowhere. Go just around Christmas. She's like, "Yeah, I'm leaving," and he's like, "What? And then she takes everything.
No, but before that, she says, "Well, I meant to tell you, but I didn't." Or
I meant to tell you ages ago. The right situation never came up.
Yeah, she says it a couple of times. Oh, I meant to talk to you about that, but
but it totally slipped my mind.
It feels right with that character, though. She seems like the kind of person who would say that,
and you know, she seems like the kind of person that actually that's actually truthful to that. She probably meant to tell him at some point, and then just totally forgot or slipped her mind or whatever. And then she's just like, "Well, I'm just gonna do it." You know?
not out of malice, but just because she thinks and sees the world differently.
I mean, It's a little malice.
There's a little malice.
There's a little malice there because, like, nobody just doesn't allow somebody to at least try to talk it out and stuff. And, you know, the whole time he's trying, she's like, please stop bothering me, okay?
Well, she doesn't want to talk it out because she's already made up her mind that that's it.
Right.
And she's moving on, and he's not going to want to move on.
Because he just found out about it.
Yeah, like she's never given him a hint.
No
that
preparation whatsoever.
ever going to happen.
Right.
And then her friend, I guess they know each other, George.
Yeah, they all know each other.
Shows up to help move, and he's like, I'm sorry, no.
Awkward.
Yeah, he's like, no, no hard feelings.
They're like walking in like, oops. And they're taking stuff.
And then he's helping.
Yeah, and then they talk him into help because he's a helpful schlub. I mean, poor guy.
He's such a nice guy, you know, that, like, you feel sorry, but then in a second you're like, dude, get a backbone. Tell him fuck off. You know?
Yeah, and then he's, you know, he keeps having these dreams, or she keeps popping in. Is it a dream? Is it not a dream? Yes, it's a dream. And it's one of those cruel dreams that you have when you've lost someone and it feels miserable and you're miserable. But just as he's starting to get over this, starting to deal with this, he gets in this situation where you follow this cute girl in an ice cream thing. You go, oh, well, you never know. Why not give it a try? Why not see what happens?
Well, before then, also, we do get to see his job and what he does,
yeah.
and that's very important to the plot of the story.
He's kind of a clown on the radio from back in the 80s, a morning personality who does silly stuff and
just to keep like people's spirits up and make people like throughout the day, I guess. Like I get it, like because you're on your way to to work, and you're stuck in traffic, as the traffic lady is talking about, or you're doing something, you just want to listen to somebody just like make you laugh.
It was a big thing in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s before Clear Channel bought all the independent radio stations. Everybody had their own morning show that was goofy and wacky, and you'd listen to it on the way to work, and they didn't really play music so much as tell jokes and just be goofy. And unfortunately, all that stuff's gone now because corporate America killed it. But everybody kind of had that, and
way to bring it down.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, yeah, Scotland had it too. England had it. Everybody sort of had that format.
Yeah.
At one point. But so and it fits his personality too. Mm-hmm. You know, you can tell he completely enjoys it. He loves doing all the jingles. He loves doing all the commercials. He's the perfect guy for that. So he's found that space in his life, and he thought he found the space in his life for Maddie. But it turns out not so much.
We find a lot of that out through I guess his best friend,
Colin, the surgeon,
who comes in and kind of tells him like, "Well, this is good," and you're saying he's like one of those people who, what?
They always try and find the best part of like the worst situation.
Yeah, like you could be like have like no legs or something, then he'll still be like, well, at least you still got your arms. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
And it's funny because I forget the name of it, but I know Albert Brooks kind of also uses a similar scene to that where Colin is like, you know, looking around, trying to make him feel better by seeing this empty room. He's like, oh, well, that cup is all you. Or that book way over there in the emptiness, that's you.
Yeah, the only book on the shelf is you. That's totally
He's trying to make him feel better, you know, and it's just kind of making it seem worse.
Yeah.
It's painful to
watch. It's painful because, like, he's the guy means well, but he's, in the same sense, he's not doing anything good to help it.
And that's one of the best things about Bill Forsyth's movies, especially his Scottish films. He has a way of not only having humor but balancing it with sadness. There's a lot of sadness in these movies, and so they're very bittersweet. But there's usually just enough comedy so that you're feeling good by the end of it, and just enough sadness to make you appreciate the humor and the happiness that it does come with it. Like Local Hero has sadness mixed into the humor as well. Same thing with Gregory's Girl. We'll have to show you that someday. It's really good. But yeah, that's a hallmark, a very subtle hallmark of his films that you don't really see anywhere. And just to get back to what I was saying with regards to the psychiatrist, I know you guys weren't expecting that. So there's a point where he's, got himself mixed up in this ice cream war, and he's talking with a Mr. Bunny, who is the independent Mr. Bunny ice cream salesman that he ran into. And, he witnesses one of their trucks getting demolished, and he finds himself in the middle of this ice cream war, which he was just following the truck and saw a pretty girl and wanted to get some ice cream and maybe get a date because he was lonely.
Yeah.
So he didn't know what he was getting himself into.
Well, he doesn't do anything when he meets her either. He doesn't say, "Hey, can I get your number?" or anything. You just kind of...
And he might have, but extraordinary events overtook him.
No, because he leaves after he gets the ice cream, and he was heading to his car. I'm pretty sure he's going home. I would have liked to have him to talk to the girl, but I guess her...
he didn't get a chance because the other guy was there.
The other guy was there.
She had served him, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he was kind of he could always come back and find her again. Mm-hmm. But events overtook that, and then... So he's getting himself involved in all this and all these Mr. Bunny things, and his boss is listening to him, and he's like, "I want you to talk to my doctor friend." He's like, "Oh, you think I'm crazy, Mr. Bunny?" Kind of like Donnie Darko. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Before that, though, the boss has to have a talk with him,
right?
Because that's what makes the psychiatry one so much funnier.
Yeah. Right. So he's trying to convince him before you go to this doctor. He's like, I was a preacher's boy in the Navy. And sometimes you have to have ship-to-ship transfer in the angry seas, and you're in a little bucket hanging by the rope, and the swells are so bad that you can't see where you're coming from or where you're going, and you get lost, and blah, 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 blah. So he makes that point, and he's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So eventually he ends up insisting that he goes to see the psychiatrist, and he already is set up because the psychiatrist lets him in, and you're seeing all this nautical stuff on the walls and little boat models.
So yeah,
and
I just
stuff.
assumed they were I guess nautical buddies, or whatever. That's how they knew each other.
And so the psychiatrist is asking him pointed questions and blah 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 blah. And then finally he's like, "Well, I've got this story to illustrate him," and he tells him the exact same story. And before he can even finish it, Dickie's like, "Oh yeah, I know this one." Blah blah blah. And he's like, and the psychiatrist immediately is like, "Wait a second, that's my story. How could you know that? I never told anyone that before." And just is very upset with it, and he just totally turns the scene around.
Yeah, because the whole scene you're thinking basically this guy's thinking this guy's crazy because of the Mr. Bunny, and that he's gonna tell them, he can't work anymore, or something is, or this guy really is literally crazy, blah blah blah. But instead of going that route, it just changes. The whole story changes, and it's kind of funny.
I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in film, I think. It was just so unexpected and so delightful. I loved it. And then, all the reoccurring jokes with the ice cream and the pies and the sweets, and they keep doing it. And it gets to the point where even Dickie's laughing at the ridiculousness of it, and it's just so funny to me.
Yeah, because they say meet them at this place because it has the best pie or something,
He's cracking up, and then
he's
they're offering each other sweets.
Of course it does, because that's all. Everybody's just eating food all the time. Oh, snacks, sweets.
Isn't that a common Italian mafia stereotype? They're always going to food.
Well, there's food
restaurants
events,
and all that kind of stuff. So this is just the twist on it.
And of course, the other twist, too, that you find out is these guys are fighting, but it turns out they're all related. And he doesn't know this, and he comes to find all this information out as things go along. But he comes up with a solution, and that's what happens. That's how he resolves everything. And he's able to finally move past everything that happened to him at the beginning by doing exactly what he and Matthew said. She changed and moved on. He didn't, but he ends up changing, and he is able to finally move on. And I think he's finally at a point. It's kind of bittersweet, but he's finally at a point, even though his tooth is bothering him, that he can move on to the next stage in life.
If he would stop eating ice cream, maybe his tooth wouldn't bother him so much. But no. So there's a really great scene in the movie that I love. My favorite scene is the hospital scene where he goes in there and he meets this older woman who is I guess she has 2 weeks left to live or something.
Well, no, she's been in the hospital for a couple months.
Okay.
And,
I thought he said something about that.
Is still in there, know.
So she listens to him every morning on the radio, and she loves him. She doesn't love Rufus. Apparently he says he doesn't love her either. They both give each other, the bird and stuff. And I mean, they're just employees who work together or whatever.
Well,
But
Colin...
He's the weekend morning guy,
Yeah.
so there's a little rivalry there.
Colin brings him in for a purpose. First, because yes, it's gonna make the little lady feel good because she listens to Dickie Bird every day, and so that happens. But at the same time, he's also showing him you matter, even if you don't think that what you're doing is important. It sort of is to some people.
Somebody out there you matter to that you never realized you did. And honestly, it was a really good turning point for him, because it was at the time where he was sort of at the lowest of his lows and stuff, and he just needed that, and his friend really helped him get that. And so I really like Colin was his name.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like Colin because Colin was there throughout his basically
and
his kids
family.
love him.
Yeah.
He's Uncle Dickie. And so, which, by the way, explain to people Alan and Dickie.
I don't know. It's just a weird nickname thing.
We didn't know that. We didn't we never heard
I thought that
before.
was like his radio name was Dickie Bird.
Yeah.
It's just weird. But I do love the scene where they have him come over, and so they double up the girls in the bunk bed, and he's sleeping on the other bed. But before he can get to the bed, he's got to try and quietly sneak in. And every step he takes, there's a squeaky toy. And even when he sits on the bed, there's like squeaking things. And he's like, he can't not squeak. It was really cute.
Yeah, you and your squeaky toys. You loved it.
I do.
I
thought it was charming.
It was cute. And then the kid was just very...
Oh, my God. What an adorable kid.
Loved him and wanted him to stay. And... and it's just, it was sweet. It made me like kind of, I don't know.
You don't often see movies that have a friend or friendship that is realistic and good. A lot of the movies have that backbiting friend or the friend who's just superficial or it's a stereotype, and this is one of the very few that I've seen that, no, this is a friend, this is a true friend, this is a good friend, a friend that's been a friend for years. And, if he's like, hey, why don't you come over for dinner? He means come over for dinner.
Right.
Not
and
just saying it because he asked.
Not only that, but they do discuss the background between them. They talk about, oh, well, I liked you in college, and you were always the guy that, was popular because you were Mr. Showbiz, and you got all the girls. And he's like, oh, yeah, but you kept one of them.
Yeah, he hung out with them because he got all the girls.
It was adorable. It was a great way to sort of explain their relationship and their friendship and why they interact the way they do.
Yeah.
So it was really, really well written. And, and again, me, I can't stand stuff that's oriented towards teenagers. This was all adults, and I love that. It's the kind of movie that you don't really see anymore because, Hollywood decides that teenagers have all the money and no teenager's going to want to see this, which is probably true.
No teenager's going to want to see this?
No.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think this, even though I think this would probably be a PG-13 movie, I don't remember much cursing in the movie or anything.
Oh, no, not very little. I mean, I was 18 when this came out, and I loved it. I remember seeing it in the theater.
Yeah.
But I was a big Bill Forsyth fan at that point, and I have always been a big Bill Forsyth fan.
But it's more of an adult movie, adult-centered. I do remember when we were watching it, you saw you kind of laughed in a way and felt sorry for him when the couple came by and they started doing all the couple stuff and the guy's just sort of miserable and unhappy.
We've all been, and again, universal. We've all been there. We've all been miserable because of a relationship, and then you see everybody else enjoying themselves and being happy, and it hurts.
Or he follows that one girl just like he was. It seemed like with the other.
That was great,
Maddie, and it's almost like same situation, and then she turned out to have kids. Or
well,
whatever.
yeah, and it's shot in such a way. He's on the other side of the produce or whatever it was, the stuff that they're selling. So you see her face, and it's a pretty face, and he's like, "Oh, okay, she's pretty. Maybe I can say hello." Blah blah. And it's not until he gets to the other side that she's pushing a cart with babies in there. She's got another baby strapped to her. She's probably got another one on her back. He couldn't tell. And he's like, okay, not that one.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of wrong. I mean, I guess when you see kids, generally think somebody might be married, so you might not, try to talk to them. But like, nowadays, I think people would actually pursue that, even if they had kids, or whatever, it would be good getting quickly into a family, but I don't know.
I don't know. I just thought it was a very subtle sort of humor bit that he likes to sprinkle in there from time to time, or like the look-alike things that he likes to throw in, where it's just these absurd people that think they look like certain people and they don't. They don't look anything like that.
Bob Hope.
Well, it's even better was Fred Astaire. The guy's like, Fred Astaire, and then he's like doing this goofy little dance.
I liked when he was talking to his boss. My favorite funny moment that just cracked me up, because I've thought this so many times, is when he's talking to his boss and he gets the story. Mm-hmm. His boss is like, "You get it?" And he goes, "No." Well, are you sure you don't get it?
Surely
like,
this
can't
means
explain
right?
The story.
He can tell it, but he can't explain it.
The meaning of the story is what I mean. And he's like, "Yeah, no, I don't get it." Just looks at him. That cracked me up. Because we've had that. People were telling you the story and you're like, "I don't get the point. But if I say okay, will you stop talking?"
Yeah. So
you've done that to me.
Bill Patterson is the lead.
Done that to everybody.
He's an excellent Scottish actor. He's been in a billion things. Probably most recently, you would know him as the latest Game of Thrones thing that's on HBO. I don't know remember what it's called.
House of Dragons.
House of Dragons, yeah. So he's in that one. But he's been in a whole bunch of other things as well. So he's the main guy. And then you've got Claire Grogan, whom I absolutely adore. I had a massive crush on her. She was in Gregory's Girl. She was the one that I was nuts over back then. So I would have been like, 15, 16 years old.
Was Gregory's Girl before this one?
Yeah, Gregory's Girl was 1980. Okay. And after that movie, she was lead singer for a band called Altered Images, which I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, but they did the big song Happy Birthday, and there were a bunch of songs, and they were kind of a big thing in the 80s. And she only really ever acted again in Bill Forsyth movies. But then after that, she went on and did a lot of British TV. So she was on Red Dwarf and EastEnders and just a whole bunch of stuff. So she's a lot more popular or well known in the UK than she is here. But I've just always loved her, and she's kind of like the sort of, I don't want to say femme fatale, but she's like the new object of his interest, and it turns out there's a lot more to her than what he thinks.
Well, and that was also a good thing, because a lot of these movies, they would try to force like that into to eventually having a relationship, but the movie wasn't about it wasn't like a romantic comedy or anything. It wasn't about him finding, he ends up finding more about himself and changing and still being a bachelor by the end of the movie. So like throughout it, you're just like, okay, he's finding comfort and joy in just being, by himself and figuring out what he needs to do.
And there's a very interesting scene where he subtly is kind of reaching out a little bit to her, because I don't think he's quite sure if she's with Trevor or not, where he's like, I'd like to get to know you a little bit more, and don't people date anymore? And she's like, well, gee, I don't know, and just kind of leaves it at that. And then I think that sort of like gives him no sorry.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't pursue it after that.
But they were like related, right? Trevor and her were like, I thought they were brother and sister or something.
No.
Trevor, what's his name? Mr. Cool, Mr.
McCool.
The Italian McCools. That's Trevor's uncle.
Right.
That's
by marriage,
father.
I think. Yeah.
So by marriage.
So I think he's with her. She's his daughter, and that makes him the uncle or brother-in-law or whatever the hell it is. But he comes from another group. He comes from the fish and chip people.
Okay, so she's with him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She's with him.
She's with Trevor?
Yes.
Okay.
Charlotte.
And they are the ones who are off being the rogue Mr. Bunny. Mm-hmm. And, and he's like, oh, and all these wonderful independent he was just was just a load of shit. It was just funny.
Both
It was
of them
just
were a load of shit.
it was just families fighting is what it was.
Yeah,
And
it was, yeah, and I get understanding, like, if there was an actual ice cream war that was dealing with drugs and dealing with all this stuff, and then you just make an ice cream war that's actually dealing with ice cream and not dealing with you know, a manufacturer who just wants to overtake, and that goes back to Local Hero though, right? Like, you know, this company went to Scotland to, like, oversee, you know, all these things,
buy this town.
to buy the town, and so he apparently does like to you know, kind of have stories about, you know, one company trying to, you know, buy and you know, completely buy out another company or whatever, and stuff, and the one guy doesn't want to go, you know, doesn't want to go with his uncle or whatever, and all at the end of it, like, I love, like, where he goes up and he's like, we need you to talk to Mr. McCool or whatever, and he's like how? It's like, you just call him.
Phone the bastard.
Just call him up, and we can settle this right now.
Right,
I mean, you
right.
don't need to, like, because there is one scene I was laughing at and you were not laughing, which I was surprised. But there was that scene where they came in with huge mallets and they were just
Oh my
wrecking
God.
everything, and I was like thinking, what? And then when you find out that they are related and everything, you're like, so they would destroy their own nephew's company, you know, just because they won't agree to use their products.
Well,
Like, it's
and there
ridiculous.
again too, Bill Forsyth is again. He's the master of subtlety. He has that scene and the other scene where they attack the truck. It's done in a way that's sort of, I don't want to say typical Hollywood, but it's got the music where it's very tense, and there's you know, tension, and there's action, and it, you know, you think there's going to be some serious violence, and there is kind of violence, but it's very comical. It's almost Three Stooges kind of violence, because, you know, there was this great scene where they, you know, the guy demolishes the truck and he goes, "Oh, are you okay?" And he sees, like, "Is that blood?" He's like, "Oh no, that's raspberry syrup." You know, so he takes the violence, but he removes the bad stuff, and it ends up being comedic.
Or the violence with that truck, and then the people come up with their, you know, with their masks on their face, which I don't even know if it mattered, because they knew who they were or whatever, but they came in with the masks on their face, and they come over there and go, "Hey, you! Oh my God, you're the radio
Bird
DJ.
guy."
Hey, can I get an autograph?" You know? Which
And he's like, sure.
yeah, it
I
was
don't
like,
have a pen.
It was like, "Oh, well, can you just give me a shout out on the, you know, or give my mother a shout out or something like that?"
Don't
You know,
use my name.
Yeah,
Don't say me.
I just love, and, you know, nothing is wasted. All the stuff you see on screen is just used to further the story or to further the characters. Like the one part where you're seeing Bruno, whom I guess is Charlotte's brother, and this is after they've attacked him, and they're inside the truck, and they're kind of just talking and fighting and everything. And the youngest one, Paolo, who I guess, you know, he hasn't made a name for himself or anything, and he's like outside, he's like, he can't really do any damage, but he's trying. He's like, he kind of hits things a little bit, and then he goes over to the mirror and he's like, kind of trying to, like, be somebody, and he can't. He's like nobody, but he's trying because he's the youngest.
I love actually, one of my other favorite scenes is the scene inside the I guess the coffee place or whatever, the
Poor Bruno wanted the
restaurant.
concert cake.
Yeah, and he comes in there and he sits down,
No.
and the guy's like, "Do you know," to the waitress, "you know, do you have,
Maria.
you know, yeah, do you have these cakes or whatever?" And she says, "I only have 2 of those and an apple pie left or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, they'll have chips, and we'll have the that cake, and they'll eat one of the apple pies too, you know, or whatever." And was it Bruno who wanted the?
Yeah.
Bruno's like,
The
"I'd
eldest.
like a concert cake." He's like, "You'll not get that." You know?
Well, it's a shame because you're going to have to do without.
You're gonna have to get apple pie or whatever. And
He really wanted it.
yeah, and even when he left and didn't eat it, the guy, because he couldn't eat it because he went to the dentist, he tried to grab it back, and he was like, "No, you can't have it."
It's wonderful. And you're right. I'm thinking, you know, like Godfather. The Godfather scene where they go to meet and they're talking with Sonny, and then Sonny says something, and the guy turns around and says, what are you doing? Don't ever tell anybody outside of the family our business or what you're thinking. and he sort of castigates him, and it was like there was almost the exact same kind of scene.
You could definitely tell they were making fun of all of the Italian mob movies and stuff.
It was cute.
Well, he goes like, because one guy speaks in Italian, the main guy, Mr. McCool, speaking Italian, he's talking to Bruno the whole time about everything, and then Paolo, I guess, or whatever.
The youngest one.
Yeah, tells him exactly what he said, and it was supposed to be in secret.
And he's called, yeah. And I was like, "Hey, stupido! What are you doing?
What are you doing? You're not supposed to be telling him that that we want his ice cream." And he's like, "You can't have my ice cream. I want my ice cream."
And then
you could tell Paolo was so proud of himself. He's like, "No one's translating. It's my turn."
Yeah. You said before that I guess he hadn't made himself, up there yet.
Right.
And so he was trying. Yeah, he was trying to make himself. Yeah.
Fight for effort.
But this is what happens when you put thought into your characters and your story. I mean, you strike gold if you try. You know what I mean? It's just, they're not just stock characters, and it's not just a stock story. Stuff happens that you don't quite expect, and they turn things around. I love that.
Yeah.
So my only thing is when I sat there listening and realized that this was all supposed to happen within 4 or 5 days, he gets over Maddie pretty quick.
Yeah, maybe.
The case. I was like,
he's pretty miserable until he finally gets onto this ice cream thing.
Well,
I know, which is like 2 or 3 days afterwards.
Yeah,
he's chasing after girls like the day after Maddie leaves him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's I'm okay with that, because I'm like, I get it. She broke your heart completely, ripped it out, even though you're still dreaming about her and everything.
But even Colin says, you guys were kind of a bit of a caper. And he's like, don't say that. He's like, Colin understands that.
Yeah, but they were together 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, there was one scene where he says, she's never told me she loved me. And then he says, well, she told me when she was drunk she loved you and
you
everything.
You were drunk at the same time.
And you were drunk telling somebody else that you loved them. Some girl there. And I'm like, ooh. I thought to myself, that might have been the turning point.
So there are hints that their relationship wasn't really what either one of them thought. And probably Maddie figured that out before. And
you tell the person.
I'm not saying the way, not the way to do it. Right. It's just
the way to really do it. But the way to do it comically is exactly the way they did it. Right. Like exactly. That wouldn't be this would be a heavy-handed drama if they had fought, and then eventually she said, I didn't want to fight anymore and I'm done. And that would have been okay too, but it was comical.
I love the fact that it starts off as this relationship drama and ends up going into this weird ice cream war thing, and the one helps him get past that, because if it had been just a relationship drama or just an ice cream war thing, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
And that's hard to do. Usually, because when we see something like that, usually it's not developed enough, and we're usually the ones saying, "Oh, why didn't they just stick with this part of the story, or just that part? Why did you mix it up like that?" This is one of those rare examples where they were able to bring them in because the one part furthered the other part.
Right.
And I just thought it was really, really well done.
And so you're right, because if some movies do that, but they don't do it correctly, and you're very confused as to why these don't connect.
Right.
And this connected because there was that group that he was following that was, and he got very fascinated with ice cream very quickly. Like it became, and I get that. Like I got the Hillary, the boss, going, like are you okay? You don't seem like, because after a breakup, some people do sort of kind of go a little, I don't know, like a little crazy and stuff.
And he also never says who Mr. Bunny is. If he had told us who's Mr. I'm talking to Mr. Bunny. I've been having these dreams. He'd be like, no, Mr. Bunny's an ice cream truck. Like, he never tells the boss, he never tells the psychiatrist that, no, this is an ice cream truck. He just calls him Mr. Bunny.
Like, as if
you're
everybody knows
for trouble if you're calling, Mr. Bunny.
Well, he's also being coy about it, too. He's like, I got this thing, I'm going to let it break. let me see it through, and then I'll let everybody know what's going on. So
you got to present more than Mr. Bunny.
You do.
Yeah, you gotta say
even
that
as crazy as my boss is, I would have to give him a bit more than Mr. Bunny.
we don't see Mr. Bunny here at all.
And I like the way that he's able to do jokes without saying the joke that we all recognize.
Oh yeah.
Like the time, what was it when he was
on the phone?
Yeah, on the phone where he's like, get me Dickie Bird's contract, find out if there's a sanity clause. No, sanity clause, not. He didn't say the other part, but we all got it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, but it was funny.
It was skillfully done.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I thought it was funny. I thought
British humor there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, there are those, some of the professional reviewers who consider this a lesser of Bill Forsyth's films. I think this one is just as good as Local Hero and Gregory's Girl, personally. And as a matter of fact, I have a sweet spot for this one just because...
Sweet spot.
Yeah, this is like, even though it's in the third in line of the three of the Scottish films, there was an earlier one that isn't, his first movie isn't really quite in this group, but of these three, it's not the middle child. I forget the name of it. I have it as well. It's a decent movie, but it's not quite at the level of these. But this one is kind of like the middle child, where everybody sort of makes a big fuss about the first one and about the baby, but the middle one is kind of lost. This is the middle child of his group. It gets kind of lost and doesn't quite get the love that I think it deserves, but I love it as much as Local Hero, which is my favorite movie of all time, and I love Gregory's Girl too, so this one is right up there in my opinion.
I'm just going to say this. Criterion has put out a bunch of movies that we have talked about,
Yes.
that we've done for Film Freaks. Mate One was one of them, and then I forgot what it was, but something more recent that UE did, then it went on Criterion. If Criterion could put this out, that would be awesome. So I'm going to tag Criterion in a post about this.
And I don't know why it's not been released in the United States on DVD. It's just there are some movies that they just haven't been. It's just ridiculous to me. I don't know if there's a rights issue or what's going on with that. But
Is
Local Hero was out.
Forsyth still alive?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's still around.
So you could, I mean,
he would be late 70s or very early 80s. I don't think he's directing anymore, but he's still around. I know he pops in on occasion when they do Scottish film festivals, because they have film festivals where they show his movies, and they laud him as they should, because he's probably their best well-known film director at the moment. It's just he doesn't really do stuff for Hollywood. It's definitely not for Hollywood, and I think he's kind of more or less retired. But I would love to see this come out in Blu-ray or Criterion Watch.
It did look nice when he gets, like, he pulls off the road and he goes to look, and you see the whole town.
Yes, and the
everything.
train goes by.
The train goes
That
by.
was great. That's like life. This isn't a set. This is real life.
Yeah, and then do you see the Mr. Ice Cream Bunny? That was a funny scene, because he thought the guy was trying to avoid him, and so he went to track him down, and then ends up bumping into him.
And it's adorable because he reacts. He's angry, and he hits his fist on the hood. And then a little stuffed bunny falls down, and it just kind of undermines. It's like, wait a second, is this going to go somewhere bad? And then the bunny falls, and like, okay, maybe not.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I liked it. I love every bit of this movie. I really do.
Because, like, even the mob guys weren't very threatening to me. Like, they weren't scary or whatever. They were doofuses, They were
kind of.
Yeah, they were idiots, and it just goes to show, like, because, like, even though at first they're scary when they're at the masks on, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? And then later when you actually get to meet them and everything, or when they come up and say, can we get an autograph and all that stuff, you realize these guys are idiots, because, like, no idiot would even come up and talk to those guys. They would just leave, because you have no idea who these people are, you wouldn't say anything. But yeah, and they tell them, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
And music by Mark Knopfler. The music was really, really good. There's some really cool jazzy stuff. There's some really good guitar stuff going on. What did you guys think of the music?
Very 80s.
Very 80s.
Yeah. There were a couple times where I'm like, okay, the jazz fit with this scene, but you know,
I
didn't
thought
tie it all
so.
together. Yeah, it wasn't bad.
I thought everything fit. I thought the music was really good. It just makes me feel good. I don't know. The music just made me feel
You're
good.
a smooth jazz guy.
I guess so. I don't know. I didn't mind. Like, it just made me like, go, okay, this, you know, because 80s and I like 80s and 90s movies. Those are like my favorite. And so anytime I can sit down and watch one I've never seen, you know, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm at home.
I know, and it's bittersweet because part of me wishes that he hadn't done the Hollywood jump, which is what I guess most directors want to do. I just don't think he understood until it was too late that when you get over there, they're the ones calling the shot, not you. So you have to conform to them, even if it means ruining the thing that makes you you, which is ridiculous. Then why did you hire me in the first place? You know what I mean? It's just so... I just don't understand. It's Hollywood. I really don't. We think your movies are great, so here, make our movie, but don't do it like you would do it. Make it like we want to do it. Why did you get anybody to do that then? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that's the point. And then sure, maybe he couldn't have gone, but you know, a lot of people in America would not have heard of Bill Forsyth if he hadn't made that jump. You know, and stuff. So maybe, I mean, it's always a good thing when you're kind of broadening your, you know, your career, you know what I mean? Because sure, there are people like you who know what Gregory's Girl and these movies are, but I never heard of them until you showed them to me, right? Had he made those movies here and made more, I'd be like, oh, I know who Bill Forsyth is. Let me check some of his older movies.
Yeah, it was kind of a golden age for me between the 80s in general, because, you know, high school and college, and even right after college when I first started going to grad school, and I was, you know, 20 minutes from Newark, Delaware, where they had the State Theater. So that was the local college theater. These are the movies that they would play there. And they would play, you know, cult stuff and things that aren't playing in the normal big screen. So I got to see all these movies on the big screen, and it was just a wonderful experience.
The Narrow is very much like that.
Exactly.
I remember when I would go see like Novocaine, you know, with Steve Martin or whatever. It was a really good movie. I went to see that with Vittorio. We went off and we watched that movie, and we're like, this is really freaking good. But like none of the other like Regal or whatever would show that. That's not their kind of cup of tea. So it's just nice to go and see those movies in the theater and
right. And that's the reason I was able to come across a lot of these movies, and why, you know, a lot of them they just never made the jump into DVD or Blu-ray, and you got to wonder where, you know, some of them are going to, and that's why I wanted to make sure this one was done so that we could talk about it. Maybe more people will talk about it. I know there are other people who like it. It's just it's been kind of forgotten, unfortunately.
Yeah, you love kind of pointing out forgotten movies.
I do.
that have always brought you comfort and joy,
especially ones that are just a special place.
I caught it.
Don't give me that look. I wasn't being subtle. I was being very in your face. I don't care. I'm Hollywood.
Certain movies that really affect me well, I like to share with my friends and with other folks too. It's like, hey, if I love it, you guys might love it too. You know?
Yeah.
So there you go.
I really did. I enjoyed it.
It's good.
You enjoyed it too?
Yeah.
So,
yay. I'm glad.
Like I said, it was a bit slow for me, but that's also both British style, I guess Scottish, which would be similar, and a product of the 80s. I could definitely see, you know, that style, so it was very forgivable for me.
Well, I actually didn't even find it slow. Like, you know me, I've got like ADHD, so if a movie is really slow, I get bored and start tiring, and I can't like focus. This movie at least kept
driving scenes.
Yeah, that's true. Well, because he had to show off his nice car. You know,
BMW. Loved his BMW
until it got just destroyed.
And I was saying earlier, there was a guy who put this thing up on YouTube where he went and he went to all the places where the film was shot, so you get to see all the background stuff, the same shots, and just to show you, oh, this is what the thing was. You know, gosh, 84. What is that? 40 years ago? Wow.
Almost. Wow, almost 40 years ago.
That's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel sold. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. But that's great. They do the same thing with Local Hero, and that's 82. So
Oof.
So, yeah.
There you go. That's when I was born.
Yeah, thanks. But I always this I never told you this one, but this is one I kind of wish he had done, especially with the look-alike thing, because that shows up a little bit in Local Hero 2, where there are two guys in the pub where they're trying to convince each other that one of them looks like this, one of them looks like that, and they don't look either one. Mm-hmm. But Burt Lancaster's in there. He plays Happer. Yeah. And I wanted to see a scene where Happer goes in and meets one of those guys where the guy's like trying to say, hey, I look like Burt Lancaster. And then Burt Lancaster's like, you don't look like him. I look like him more than you do. And it's actually Burt Lancaster saying that. I think that would have been hysterical.
I think that would have been too meta.
Probably.
Which movies weren't doing that back then. Like they didn't really do that till like the 90s.
Right,
So
right.
in the 80s they weren't really, because I think a lot of times, especially back then, they thought that was too on the nose or too whatever and everything. Nowadays, it would definitely be appreciated.
Yeah, especially, subtle stuff. But but anyway, I just wanted to make sure that folks out there got to see it. I'm glad you guys got to see it and enjoy it. And there you go, Film Freaks. If you get a chance, go out and find Comfort and Joy if you can. And if not, let's write to someone and demand that it's put out in Blu-ray.
Criterion, somebody just release this, man. Yeah. Like there's, I don't know. You're right. There might be a rights issue, but somebody should make this or put this out on like Blu-ray with a commentary. I would love to hear Bill Forsyth's
Get Bill Potterson, get him and Bill Forsyth on there. Maybe Eleanor David, maybe Claire Grogan. Have comments, have them talking about it. Love to hear it.
Yeah, me too. I'd be down with that.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Just Jenn, for joining us.
Your first time.
Yeah.
You survived.
Yeah.
A good one.
Survived much better. And
this was an
better
easier
mindset
one.
Than before.
We'll have you on some more good shows too. I think you'll enjoy it.
As long as you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Thank God you didn't show her one that she didn't
No.
I
wouldn't have done that. But thank you all for joining us, and please joining us next time on Film Freaks.
All right. Until then, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
He's a Karen, but he's not Karen.
No, he's not a Karen at all. Whatever.
It was good. You monkeyed with it, monkey.
No, because I can still see.
I know.
And I could see that before.
Monkey.
Okay, there we go. Whoop. A little too much. Okay. Do you like it or not?
Outtakes.
Whatever. I don't know.
It's fine.
It's fine.
The only other option is just move your thing out of the way.
We need to get some kind of remote. I drank all my soda.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry, I got a jet.
It's cool.
So I was like, how do I settle